Perfect.
Hi.
Hi, Marian.
Hi.
Hi, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure. It really, really is. Thank you so much for your interest.
No, Marianne, this is really an honor for us. I was just having a word with Tony, and he told me this is the first time you're talking to a book club in Pakistan, and
Yeah.
we are thrilled, really, beyond
Oh,
measure.
I'm thrilled. And I wish I was there in person with you. I would love to come to Lahore.
Have you seen Lahore? Have you seen any of Lahore, really?
No, I'd love to come. One of my favorite writers, Mohsin Hamid, was born in Lahore.
Yes, he is born
I,
in Lahore and he writes about our city, and it's epic. I think if you were ever to come, we would love to show you the city.
oh, I would, when the COVID is over, I'll
Yeah.
come. I'd love to.
That would be amazing. That would be amazing. Thank you so much, Marianne, for doing this for us. I was just
Honestly,
having a
it's
word
my
with Tony,
honor.
and I told him it's as if you foresaw the pandemic and you wrote this for all of us who were going through pangs of vulnerability, who were not being able to figure their lives out. And this book kind of put things in perspective for all of us, for me especially, because I do connect with it on the level where I found it to be a comfort read for me every time.
I'm so glad. That's a lovely thing to hear.
So we've been joined by quite a few of people, and we'll start now. Those
Okay.
of you who've just joined us, this is Sana from the Reading Nook, and we are doing a book club meet, concluding our book club book of the month, which was Grown Up by Marian Keyes, a book that we have discussed thoroughly and we've loved. And Marian has joined us today. I'll just give us a brief introduction of you. Marianne is one of the most successful Irish authors of all time. Her books have been bestsellers around the world with a total of over 30 million of her books sold to date in 33 languages. Anybody out there won the British Book Awards for popular fiction and the inaugural Melissa Nathan Prize for comedy romance. This charming man won the Irish Book Award for popular fiction. Marianne's latest book, Grown Ups, is publishing in hardback and ebook in February 2020. Thank God. And the books that she writes deal variously with modern ailments, including addiction, depression, domestic violence, the glass ceiling, and serious illnesses, but always written with compassion, humor, and hope. She's published 3 collections of her journalism titled Under the Duvet and Further Under the Duvet, which is what I'm reading these days. And recently, the collection of essays, which is Making It Up as I Go Along. She includes amongst her hobbies reading, movies, shoes, handbags, and feminism. I don't think any of us would disagree with those.
Oh, great. You can
So
take me shopping for handbags when I come.
definitely, I'm reading further under the duvet, and I was just reading the essay the other day where you were talking about your makeup assignments and how you got to review makeup, and I was gushing like anything. So thank you, Marianne. Thank you. It's an honor to be joined by you. Like I said earlier, and we've discussed this thoroughly over the chats that we've had, we've mostly found this as a comfort read. And I'd begin the discussion by quoting the very quote that your book starts with. And it says, when we were children, we used to think that when we were grown up, we would no longer be vulnerable. But to grow up is to accept vulnerability. To be alive is to be vulnerable. Now, I found that very interesting, Marianne, because I think that this is exactly a summation of what all of us have been feeling, especially in the past couple of months, where we feel that life has totally spun out of control and things are all over the place. What do you have to say about this, and what made you explore the theme of vulnerability, especially with reference to adulthood?
Oh, I mean, I suppose, as a child, first of all, I just want to say hello to everybody and thank you so much for joining me, and Sana. And I know we're going to have time at the end where you can ask questions. So please don't be shy because it's my opportunity to get to know you. Thank you. Okay, so Sana, your question. Yeah, as a child, I was always I was a fearful child. And and then I became a fearful teenager. And I was constantly waiting to get to a time in my life where I wasn't afraid anymore. And I thought there will come a time when I'm an adult and all my fears will be lifted from me and I would be in control of my life and my feelings. And it never happened. I got to 21 and it didn't happen. And I got to the age of 30 and it didn't happen. And at some stage along the way, I realized that my fears had changed, but that I remained afraid. You know, and the things that worried me as a child, some of them had gone, but other things, you know, I began to worry about my parents and them aging, or, you know, or about ailments in my own body, or things like money, which was always taken care of when I was a child. And it dawned on me at some stage that I was never ever going to get to a spot or an age or a situation in my life where I would feel free from fear, and that I would always be vulnerable. And I had to accept, you know, there was a kind of, the work had to be done to accept that, because I don't like being afraid. And I had held out so much hope that one day I'd feel secure. But I think COVID has absolutely exacerbated the fear that's in all of us, because to a certain extent, we all as adults have some control over what we do, or how we spend our time, or how we protect our family. And with this, it's too uncertain. You know, we don't know what's going to happen to
I
that.
know. Play,
Will I keep talking?
Yes, please keep talking. Guys, we're going to have a question and answer session at the end of it. And you can write down your comments in the chat box, please. Thank you.
Oh, okay, there's a chat box. Yeah, so I think COVID has just, we are far more vulnerable and we are far more powerless than we have been in our adult lives since forever, really. And it has been really tough. And I think in the beginning, we were all, well, here in Ireland, we were all like, okay, we can do this, we'll do lockdown, we're all together in this. And there was a huge sense of solidarity and a kind of naive hope that, like, in 6 weeks' time, we would have flattened the curve and the vaccine would be coming and it would be good. And then the time passed and the vaccine didn't come. And now we're like facing into a second wave. And it's become clear that this is something we're going to have to live alongside for a kind of an unknown amount of time. And uncertainty is just very, very uncomfortable to live with. So yeah, it's been a tricky time.
So, Marianne, I also feel that when I was reading this book, one thing firstly, I loved all the female characters that you would pen down. They were, all three of them were beautiful, but I also felt it was so brave and so interesting of you to interpret male vulnerability as well. Because when I read that episode with Johnny, you know, losing control and talking in his sleep, and it kind of made me realize that, you know, a lot of men are under a lot of pressure to succumb to the idea of manhood that we've created for them, and we don't give them their due. How did you come up with that?
I mean, thank you so much for seeing that, because that is very much how I feel. That sexism as it kind of exists, where like the man is meant to be alpha with his, you know, with his job, and he, you know, he's meant to bring home the money, and that he isn't meant to show his feelings or his vulnerability or his fear. That's a very rigid and narrow way for a man to live his life. And like, men, even though they are socialized differently to women, they feel the same worries and fear of loss, fear of abandonment, fear of loss of status, fear of failure. Like, they feel all those things, but they are not given the opportunity to display those emotions because they're afraid they're going to be judged. The people are going to say he's weak, or he's not manly enough, or what's wrong with him, he needs to get control. And I wanted to show that, like, Johnny is an alpha man on the outside, but he is as vulnerable as a woman. He's just a human being underneath that. And, you know, I just wanted to kind of start a conversation maybe around how sexism damages men as much as it damages women. I mean, obviously women on the face of it are the ones who suffer the most because, we're not, we're objectified in a way that men aren't. And we have less power in the world than men do. But men pay a high price for the the positives. So I just think if the world was more equal, it would be better for all of us, men as much as women. So yeah, I wanted to create. I mean, and there are four main characters in men in Grown Ups, and they are all vulnerable. Like Liam,
Yes.
like his marriage has failed, and he's got two children that he doesn't have a relationship with, and he feels guilty and resentful about it. um and he's very immature, and he almost tries to blame the children
Yeah.
for the fact that they don't have a relationship. But I still felt very sorry for him, like that he wasn't capable of loving in a basic way. So yeah, I found that the book was a kind of an opportunity to explore male vulnerability as well as female.
And I think you've done that beautifully, Marianne, because I am a mother of two sons, and I constantly worry about my sons, not knowing or not being in touch with their emotions as a daughter would be, because that's what we're told as women, we're the feeling part and they're the doing part. Uh,
Yeah.
Also, now that you've mentioned there are four main male characters, there's also wonderfully penned three female characters that you have coined. And what me and a lot of people from the book club also noticed is that they're so vividly and so beautifully written, and they are so relatable and real. How do you manage to do that with such a huge cast and make every character so unique and so flesh and blood? It doesn't really feel like these are characters, they're people.
You're so lovely. I mean, thank you so much. Um, I mean, I take a long time to write my books, which actually I feel very ashamed about, because so many other writers, they write a book a year, like they're really, and I'm slow. And as I get older, I've become slower. But on the other hand, at least my publishers, they don't put pressure on me to produce books quickly. And that means that I have time to spend with my characters. And it's like when you're marinating
Yeah.
meat before you cook it. I feel like I get enough time to marinate my characters. And it's very important for me with my characters that they're not perfect, because I'm not perfect. Nobody is perfect. And it's important that they're flawed. Um, I mean, it's difficult when a person is just perfect and
Yeah.
everything they do is lovely. I feel alienated from them. I like to see the weakness in a person as well as their strengths. I like to see the totality of a person. And yeah, it was funny. Jessie, who is the eldest one, in a way, I kind of identify with her because I am the eldest in my family of origin. And I'm really like her in that, like, I'm always organizing and I'm always trying to make us all be together. And yeah, and they're, I know that they call me the control freak. And but I can't help it. I get such a kind of a joy, out of having everyone in the same room all together, all my siblings, all their children, my mother. I want us, all their spouses, like everyone has to be there. So that part of me, like the organizing control freak aspect of Jessie, was something that I really related to, and I'm sort of ashamed of. But also I forgive myself, because it makes me happy. Family makes me happy. Then the youngest character, Nell, who is so much younger than me, like I'm 57, she's 30. And I thought it was important to have a younger woman in because their values are really different to the values. Well, I mean, I agree with a lot of what Nell believes in, but they would call me a boomer. So I know. And I feel like saying, I'm not a boomer, I'm far more concerned than boomers. But I have a niece who's 20 who inspired Nell. And my niece is so concerned about the planet. She doesn't buy new clothes. You know, she won't spend money on new clothes. Like everything she wears, she gets from somebody else or she buys in a charity shop. And her whole ethos went into Nell. Funny enough, the character that I had most difficulty with was Cara, because at one stage, all she was her eating disorder, and she needed to be more rounded than that. And like my editor kept coming back to me and saying, Cara isn't there yet. Cara isn't there yet. So I needed to show Cara being lighthearted and being happy, as well as being in the grip of this horrible illness. So getting the nuances of her right up to the very last moment, like the manuscript was due to go for print the next day. And I was still on the phone to my editor and going, should I change this? Please tell me what to do. And she was like, let it go. It's all right. But it matters to me because I suppose I feel I'm writing about women and I'm writing for women. And I want to show that it's possible to be very powerful like Jessie is, and also very vulnerable like Jessie is. Like Jessie suspects that nobody really likes her.
Yeah.
You know, that people spend time with her because she makes them. So yeah, to create nuanced characters is something that I feel lucky enough to have the time to do. And I feel it's kind of the main thing that I offer my readers, because I suppose we're all unique. Like every single person here today, like you have had life experiences and you have dreams that I will never know about, and maybe nobody will ever know about. There's a universe in your head that I don't know about, or you know, that is completely your property. And when I create characters, I try and honor the individuality of every single one of us, and to do it in a way that recognizes that we are many, many different people in one. So thank you, Sandra. That was a very long answer, but thank you. That was a beautiful question.
Thank you, Marianne. But I think it was so important because I honestly, once I read the book, I sat down to think, okay, who do I like more out of all these women? And I couldn't pick one. I love Jessie for a lot of things. I love Cara for a lot of things. And I definitely think Nell is a fantastic character. And now that you say she is kind of like based on your niece, I would be thrilled to know what your niece is like. I mean,
Oh,
she's so dynamic. I applaud you for that. She's a wonderful character.
thank you. And I mean, I love my niece. Because I don't have children, and I would have loved children. So, you know, my nieces and nephews are my proxy children. But my niece, who is 20, is the eldest of the seven, and I just adore her. Like, she's such a good, decent person. Um, and even though like there's a big difference in our ages, we get on really well. Like, I feel very lucky to have such a beautiful person in my life.
Wow, she's a lucky girl to have an aunt like you. I'm also going to be talking a little bit more about Nell because there's something that you wrote and it comes in the context of Nell, but I really found it beautiful and I'd like you to shed some light upon it. It says, in real life, when your person disappoints you, you have to readjust yourself and not them so you can keep loving them. Now that's a piece of advice I've given a lot of people, and I've been received a lot of flack for it because, you know, people think that, you know, I'm telling them to compromise a lot. But I'd like to hear from you what the thought is behind this particular phrase or sentence that you put.
I mean, again, it's another huge question, and it's about what I thought love was when I was a young woman. Like, I thought that there was one special person, just one, in the whole 7 billion of us on the planet. And that when I met this man, he would cure me of all my insecurities, of all my uncertainties, of all the ways that I felt inadequate. And that his love would just fill me with this kind of, cover me with this safe shield, and that I would never feel worried again, or that any of the bad feelings I'd ever had would just be wiped away, and that he would be perfect. Like, he would never annoy me. He would never disappoint me. He would never be late. He would never say something stupid. He would never smell bad, that he would always be grateful for every good thing that I did. And that everything would be just happy forever. And so then, anytime I did meet somebody, a man, and things, would start off well, sooner or later they would do something that wasn't perfect. And I'd go, oh, this must mean he's not the one. He must go, and I must get rid of him and wait for the actual real one. And it is just, as I've got older, I realized that love isn't like that at all. Romantic love. I mean, not just romantic love, like a relationship with siblings.
Yeah.
You're always going to be hurt, and you will always hurt somebody. Sometimes, I mean, most of the time accidentally, but sometimes just, you're having a bad day and you have a kind of a reservoir of resentment, and they say something smug and I say something that I shouldn't. There's always going to be friction. There's always going to be, what's the word? Conflict. Yeah, conflict and disappointment. And so it just dawned on me that every relationship, even a romantic relationship, is just between two humans who are flawed. And that the whole thing of like early marriage is a time of great disillusionment, I think. That thing they say about the first year is the hardest. It's because, you go kind of, you're swept towards marriage and the wedding and the fabulous day, and it's all so lovely. And then the dust settles and you're just left with each other, with your inadequacies and your limitations. And I mean, I think everybody has to compromise in any relationship, because if we hold out for perfection, we won't have a relationship with anybody. And there is a fine line, I think, between realizing I need to compromise here and I need to forgive him for being so stupid. I need to forgive him for being so crass. There's a fine line between those ordinary adjustments that everybody needs to make, and then realizing, actually, no, we're into the territory where this is unacceptable. And I think that's the point that maybe causes people confusion. I mean, most of the time I say compromise, forgive. But then there are times when people do something that is unforgivable. Yeah, it has crossed the line. And that's the point where you think, okay, this is not within the realm of kind of adjustment. This has gone too far, and at that point, that's when it's okay to walk away, or to create a situation and say, hold on, this is not acceptable. And perhaps that point is different for everybody, but I really think there's a kind of a curve that every relationship has to go through quite early, where you think, they're not perfect, but they're still great. And once, it's great to be old, it's great to have learned that. And it took me a long time. But yeah, it's the key to happiness, really, to forgive people and yourself for being flawed, for just being human.
Thank you so much, Marian. You are so insightful. I feel that I could listen to you for days. An hour is just not going to do justice. I also would like to move on to the themes of addiction that you've explored with Cara. Now, it took me back to my high school days when I met with a friend who was bulimic, and she wouldn't tell anyone. And she just casually offered me to throw up after I'd had a chocolate, And back then I didn't know what it was, but now I've read about it, and you've written about it with such empathy. But I also can't help but realize that even though Kara is a wonderful husband and such a great household, she's kind of in this alone, and even when she fights the addiction, and the stigma that surrounds her and going back to work and all of that, even though you have the entire world or a great family supporting you, at the end of the day, you're kind of fighting the battles yourself. So I'd like to know more about your experience or your observations with addiction.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And thank you. And I'm sorry you went through that. Um, and I'm a recovering alcoholic, actually. Um, my issue wasn't food, but for me, I think I've learned, it's a long, long, long time. I've been in recovery for 26 years. And I've learned that like all addiction comes from the same place. Um, and bulimia it's an illness, it's an addiction. And I know some people who are in recovery for bulimia. And I wanted to write about it because it's not really talked about in the same way that, perhaps anorexia is talked about. I mean, I think with anorexia, it's impossible to lie. Your body tells the story. But people with bulimia, they can live with it for a long time because they don't present as bodily in danger, the way that anorexia would. Um, and it seems to be a really exhausting condition to live with. Also, coming back to my recovery, like with alcoholism, like my choice is I don't have to drink, I stay away from it, it's absolutely fine. But an eating disorder is far more complicated because we all have to eat.
Yeah.
Every single day, a person with an eating disorder has to engage with the object of their addiction. And it's incredibly difficult. And there's a huge amount of shame with any addiction. And I think there's extra shame with food because food is necessary for survival. And food is so often presented as like it's a wonderful thing. And I mean, it is, like, it brings people together. It's food is used, it fuels all celebrations and wonderful things. And when you feel, oh my God, I cannot eat like a normal person, it's incredibly shaming. And definitely for Cara, she manages to, the high that she gets after eating and purging is something that she needs. But the shame that she feels about it is something she can't articulate. And definitely, I think addiction is a very lonely, I mean, it's said so many times, like it's a very, very lonely thing because it happens in secret. Well, for a long time, eventually most addictions become impossible to hide. And it does become that way with Cara. But yeah, and there's this kind of thing of everybody thinks I can fix myself. I will fix myself. I will just willpower. People think I need willpower. If I wasn't so weak, if I had more willpower, I would be better. But my experience is that no person can recover from any addiction simply by deciding. It's simply not possible. Outside help is needed. Like, I mean, maybe not professional help is needed for everybody, but somebody needs to be told. Like the person with the addiction, and in Cara's case with bulimia, she needed other people to know. And you're absolutely right. She had all these people who loved her. Like her husband is such a lovely man, and he understands I suppose, the mechanics of the illness, and he loves her. Like he really loves her, and it's not enough. It's not enough to stop her, and it's not enough to even, it doesn't even break into her thoughts, and she has two lovely boys. And I hear so many people, in my case, they say, like, I had lovely children, I love them, I wanted to stop for them, and like I couldn't. It just seems to be that, like, anyone with addiction, whatever it is, they need the help of another person in order to get well. And I mean, I suppose I'm hopeful that, like, when I wrote Cara's story, that recovery was in it as well, and that there are ways to recover. You know, there are methods and tools and tricks, and that, like, eventually she did, like, and it took time, and also it took time for her to kind of win back the trust of the people who loved her, and that she loves, because, you know, addiction is so dishonest. Like, addiction involves so much lying. Like, it's exhausting. You know, and it's also exhausting for the people around the addict, as I subsequently discovered. You know, that most people are aware that something bad is going on, and they want to help and they don't know how. So I hope it's a message of hope. You know, that, like, it's horrible when you go through it, but, like, a recovery is possible.
And I hope recovery is possible for everybody who's stuck in this vicious cycle of addiction and unable to make it through. We're also getting a lot of messages, but we're going to wait till my last question, and then I'm going to open the house so you can talk to them. We've got also our friends from India now. There's Avkirat, and she's got a book club in India, and she's also joined us. There's Jayanti, and she's also one of my friends that I've met online from this virtual world. So Jayanti, you're going to talk to Marian as well in just a bit. The last thing that I want to talk to you about, especially something that struck out with me, is the contrast between the parents. Now, there's the Kinsella parents, and then there are the Keyeses. And the Keyeses are just horrible people, you know. And every day, you know, we meet hundreds of people in the workplace, in the family, and some people are just vicious like that. Why did you have to put this kind of a parent, distinction between the two parents? And how do you feel, you know, how does this get by all of this when you meet toxic people in your life and you have to deal with them?
Oh, I mean, you know, I suppose the idea of the contrast between the two parents, it was necessary for the plot. I needed Johnny to be very, very attached to the Kinsellas. And it was one of those things that sort of developed organically, in that, like, as you say, Sana, you know, we meet people in the world, and it's astonishing how unkind they can be. You know, like, both of the Casey parents are incredibly narcissistic. And, you know, for me, Johnny's conflict and Johnny's insecurities come from the fact that he never got the approval of his father. And, you know, the amount of men I meet who admit to that, you know, that, like, nothing they ever did was good enough for their dad. And it's so shocking, you know, because the men are like, you know, Johnny's in his late 40s, and, like, I know men older, like in their 50s and their 60s, and they're still carrying that young part of them that kind of remains unmet, and they feel unformed, you know, and even up to the point where, like, their dad dies and they're still waiting. And I just, and, you know, and as we talked about earlier, it's not possible for a lot of men to kind of speak openly about that they feel like a failure because they didn't do what their dad wanted them to do, and that they always felt like their father had withheld love because of that. Now, how do we deal with people? I mean, I think most people who are toxic because they have also been damaged. I don't think that if a person is happy and fulfilled and secure in themselves and feeling like all their needs have been met, I don't think a person like that feels the need to be horrible. I think, you know, I mean, the times that I have most kind of encounters with unpleasant people is in traffic. You know, like, I'm driving and I want to change lanes, and suddenly men are beeping and they won't let me in, and I feel angry because I want to get in. And I think traffic is a way where we kind of it's a microcosm for the rest of our lives. And I think people think, this is my space. You know, people become territorial. They think, I've got this little bit of space and I need to hold on to it. I cannot let somebody else take it. And I think, I mean, they respond from insecurity, and I respond from insecurity. And I also respond from feeling they are men. They won't let me have the space that I need. You know, so my anger comes from that. And I think when people behave badly, and I include myself in this, it's because I am acting out of the broken bits of me. So if I was somebody really enlightened, and like I wish I was, but I'm not, you know, but if I was really enlightened, if I was the Dalai Lama, I would smile at the beep, beep, beep men and say, you're feeling insecure because you think I'm going to take your space. But you know, really there's space for all of us on the road, you know, or I would even say, okay, I will come back and let you have your space, you know, because that's what the Dalai Lama would do. But yeah, I think if there was any way of seeing the brokenness in them, I mean, I have found that people like that are shocked when people are nice to them. You know, I think people are shamed if they have behaved badly and somebody responds with manners or a smile or that's okay. That is actually the way to do it. Like there's a phrase called kill them with kindness.
Yeah.
And if I was feeling enlightened all of the time, that's what I would do. I mean, I do think that's the key, but it's very hard because when somebody is angry with me, I get angry back. I mean, I think we all do. When we feel threatened, we respond.
Mechanism plays on.
Yeah. And it is, you know, it is better for everybody if we go, you have it. No, please, you have it. Because then they go, no, please, you have it. You know, that has been my experience. But yeah, I'm going to try and be better. I'm going to try and be more loving and to see the divine in everyone, every driver on the road. I mean,
I hope we all can do that. I really hope we all can do that at the end of the day. And lastly, and this is the last one from me, what do you think it means to grow up personally? And have you grown up, Marianne?
in a way I have. I mean, I think to grow up is to accept that you're always going to feel, that I am always going to have times where I feel afraid, where I don't know the answer. Yet people are looking to me and saying, what should we do? And it's okay to kind of say to myself, actually, I don't know what to do. Let me have a think about it. You know, to not feel that I have failed as an adult because I don't always have the answers. I will rarely have the answers immediately. And I think to be able to say, I don't know, is actually a very mature thing. And also, I suppose for me to be able to say, I'm sorry, you know, because, and to accept that I'm going to get things wrong. And to know that rather than double down on my mistakes, to own them and to offer my regret and my humility to whoever I've hurt. I mean, I think to know how flawed I am is actually very, it's very mature. And then there are other things like my dad died almost 2 years ago, and my mother is still alive. And I think there's something in that. You know, I always dreaded it, and I always thought, I'm not going to be able to cope when this happens. And somebody said to me, you don't have the strength now because it hasn't happened. But when it happens, you'll be given whatever you need to struggle through it, you know, not perfectly. And I mean, that was the case. Like, it was very, very awful. I mean, anyone who has lost a parent, there was that feeling of, oh my God, this is happening to me. You know, and of course it's happening to me. It happens to everybody. But there was still that shock of, and this thing that I have dreaded for so long has finally arrived. And I was able for it. But I think to plan in advance how we are going to deal with all kinds of hypothetical situations isn't going to work. I speak for myself, I can only react to the situation once I'm in the situation. Yeah, and to kind of realize that I will probably be given the strength, even though I'll stumble. I mean, I'll definitely stumble. To be an adult is to realize that, like, I'll always stumble, but like, so long as I keep going, then that's as good as it gets. So I hope that's of help to anyone who is worried that they're not properly grown up. You know, we're all doing our best. That's another thing that's really important to remember, that like, we're all doing our best. And that our best isn't perfect and will never be perfect, but our best is good enough.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Marian. You have really put words to whatever I think everybody has felt. And I guess that is why you're so loved everywhere in the world, because you're able to articulate human emotion in a way that touches the other person's heart right away. So sorry to hear about your loss also, but you've explained it beautifully. You really have. Thank you. So Avkirat here is from India, and she says, I'm so glad to be a part of this. Humaira says she totally agrees on male vulnerability. It is excellently portrayed in the book. Jayanti says, good evening from India. So lovely to be in conversation with all of you. So agree with you about the male vulnerability and their being human with their shortcomings and emotions. Vajiha has a question for you. So Vajiha, if you could just unmute yourself and ask Marianne yourself.
Hi, Marian.
Hi.
I had a quick question. So I couldn't help but relate to Jessie throughout the book. My life is very different from hers, but I see a lot of characteristics that are similar between me and her. And I just wanted to know if there's a character that you could relate to, and who was it?
In the book, I mean, bits of Jessie are definitely me, like being the eldest and being controlling, and feeling that if I don't do it, that anybody else's version won't be good enough. I also related a lot to Cara, you know, to the way that she feels very judged for not looking the way she should. I mean, I feel Cara is probably the most vulnerable of the three women. She's definitely the softest and the sweetest, and I feel like quite oh, what's the word? You know, sensitive, I suppose. That, I mean, there was bits of Nell that I really like. I love her optimism. But I think probably of the three, Cara is the one that is closest of the three women. But there's definitely part of me in Jessie. And I suppose I wish I was Nell. That would probably be it. Can I ask, what parts of the Jessiness did you relate to?
I could relate to her, you know, how controlling she was. I like the fact that I shouldn't call it liking, but she didn't like what people did, and she thought that if it had to be done perfectly, she was the only one who could do it. So I see that in myself, especially at workplace. So I have a hard time letting other people do work for me. Those were some of the parts that I could relate to.
Thank you. That is so lovely to hear. I mean, honestly, you've no idea how wonderful it is. Like, I'm sitting here in my house in Dublin, and I am speaking to you fabulous women across the globe. And it is so, I can't tell you how rewarding and uplifting it is to feel that the characters that I created mean something to you. I mean, thank you so, so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. Thank you. Really, I don't think we could thank you enough for this, because this is really a dream come true. I'm telling you. When I told these guys that you were on board, I think half of them, you know, jumped to their roofs and hit their heads. So we have another question, and this is from Sana Asif. And Sana, would you like to unmute and ask yourself? Do we have?
Sure.
Yeah.
I see you.
Hi, Maria. Nice to hear you. And thank you for being here with us. My question is that, you know, you focus on the issues that characters are going through, and which you have beautifully put in. So what actually inspired you the most, to come up with these issues with the characters going through?
Thank you very much, Sana, and it's my pleasure to be here. Um, Let me see. I mean, I think worry about money is a perennial. I think money is such a strange thing. I mean, in that, like, everybody wants it and everybody thinks it's the key to happiness. And also, there's so much secrecy about it. Um, and I thought, like, with Jessie and her, the way she kind of uses money as a way to harness people. Um, I always thought money was a good thing to write about. And then, I mean, the other thing, because this is a book about secrets, really, and the start of the book is about secrets. So I knew I needed 3 secrets, like one for each of the women. So Jessie was money, and Nell was infidelity. And again, infidelity is as old as time. And it would have been like turning away from a really good storyline if I didn't write about it. So I had, at the start of the book, I had no real idea how it was going. I didn't know which woman was, I didn't know which one was going to be the person who was contemplating infidelity. But in a way that was, you know, both the money and the infidelity were the kind of the obvious ones to write about. Writing about the eating disorder it took me longer to decide on it, because it's not something that I have experienced, and I wanted to do it in a way that was very respectful to people who had suffered from it. And I had contemplated maybe writing about a gambling addiction, you know, again, something that's incredibly freighted with shame. It took me a long time at the start of the book to decide, okay, this is the 3rd issue I'll go with. The first 2 were sort of obvious. But yeah, I mean, we all have secrets. And I just thought, in the end, it seemed that was the one that I wanted to write about most, and that I felt I could do a decent job with it. Does that answer your question, Sana?
Yeah, yeah, you answered it really well. Obviously, did you like, wanted to write this, or just like, it jump into your mind, like you write issues, right? So you wrote it really. I loved it, especially the characters. I just loved. I just loved the character.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I'm so grateful. I really am. Thank you. And thank you for your question.
Thank you, Sana. And you know, Marian, interestingly enough, I forgot to mention that Jessie reminds me of my father, because he's that person in my life, you know, who wants to spend money and get everybody together, like you said, you know. So it is a real compulsion some people have. I do realize that.
Yeah, honestly, my dad was like that as well. Like, he was absolutely like that. Yes. And I think I've sort of taken up his mantle, you know, since he died. Yeah. Thanks.
When she's waiting for the bill and, you know, he says, how bad was it? I've seen my father do that too, you know. So that was really good. Jayanti, you have a question for Marianne, so you can ask yourself. Are you here? Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Hi, I can see you as well.
Hello from India, and it's so lovely to be here. Thanks to Sana, who's organized this. It feels quite unreal to be sitting here and, you know, actually talking to the person who's given us this beautiful book. And this conversation has just brought the book alive for me, and I'm sure for, you know, every one of us who is here. We've read along with it, cried along with it, laughed along with it, and to hear you kind of put it all together, it's made it so much more meaningful. So thank you so much. for the conversation and your honesty. You know, it's a rare thing to come across someone speak so candidly and honestly. That means a lot. So I had some thoughts regarding the number of characters you had introduced in the book, and with a lot of back and forth, because there's, you know, some weeks after, some weeks before, a few months later. How did you manage to keep track of the characters and not get confused between their stories? Because each one of them has a very, very unique and compelling story. You know, I don't think there would be anybody who is a side character. So.
Thank you, Jay Angie. I mean, that's a lovely thing to hear. It was definitely a huge cast of characters. And, you know, and I was worried that there would be too many for people to keep track of. But it felt, okay, I'll tell you, there's so much that inspired it. Like, I spoke earlier about how I feel about my own family of origin, like my mother, my siblings, their spouses, their kids. And we are actually we're very different people. And I think if we weren't siblings, we wouldn't hang out with each other. You know, we have different values, a lot of us. But I love the mix of people. I love the various alliances between people of different ages. I find it very heartwarming and also very interesting. And I wanted to bring that sense of a huge, messy family, you know, a huge cast of big characters where like people have opinions and people clash and people love each other. I feel so happy when I'm with my family. And I'm on Twitter and I tweet about my family a lot. And I try to bring that sense because it makes me, I keep saying it, they make me so happy. So I wanted to create that same sense of huge numbers of people, a lot of energy moving around, because I thought if I enjoy it, that people might enjoy feeling that they're part of the family. And then, as I say, I'm a slow writer, but I think one of the things that I like to do is to make sure that everybody who comes into my book is fully rounded. You know, I don't want to have 3 characters in the front and then for everyone else to be one-dimensional. You know, and I think as I've got older and the more books I've written, the characters have become more numerous, but also the depth that I've given them. I want to create an entire world for people to enter and to feel that they belong and to feel that they like it in. And so I think it was that like, I love the real version of my family. And so I wanted the fictional family to feel as rewarding, as interesting, as intriguing as a real family would be. But it's funny, I've never really put it into words before until you asked me. So thank you for that. Is that kind of the answer you were hoping for?
That is what that does answer the question that I had asked. And to just, Sana, if I may just take on quickly on that, if you allow me, Sana.
Yes, go ahead.
If we have time. So you would say that a lot of these were based on people you know, or they were all fictitious characters, or?
Yeah, they're all fictitious. The only one that was in any way inspired by a real person is Nell, who was 30. Her values are the same as my niece, who was 20. You know, the fact that like, she never wants to spend money. She never wants to, you know, she never wants to perpetuate capitalism in any way. You know, she cares about the planet. She would, you know, like my niece she won't buy new clothes, which is hard for her. So Nell's values were inspired by my niece's values, but Nell is quite a different person to my niece Emma. I think my niece is more sensitive. I think Nell is a very robust person. But no, it was the energy more of my large family rather than actual characters that I brought to the book. And honestly, they're all pretty much entirely imagined. especially the men. Ed, who's married to Cara, he's a botanist, and one of my sister's husbands is a botanist, because actually writing books, it's really hard to give people interesting jobs. I just have everybody working in IT, you know, if I didn't think about it. So I got Jimmy to tell me a little bit about what it's like to be a botanist. So I took that also from real life. But pretty much they're all imagined, but it's the dynamic, it's the energy of all those people together that I wanted to recreate. So is that
Yes,
kind of
yes.
what you meant?
Thank you for giving us this world to live in, which felt very real, even though it was imagined by you, but it felt very real. Thank you. Thanks, Sana.
Thank you, Jayanti. We're kind of short on time, but I'm trying to accommodate everybody. And I know that this is going to be like probably, you know, a golden experience for everybody to be talking to Marianne. So I don't want to let go of that. We also have a question from Humaira, who talks about the vacation locations that you've put in. Humaira, do you want to ask her yourself?
Hi, thank you very much, Sana, for the opportunity. Hi, Marian. I really enjoyed the book. And as you just mentioned about occupation, I'm a librarian. So even we librarians are also portrayed a bit less in books, I think. And my question is, did you research the places that you mentioned in the book? Sometimes authors first research the place and then they create the story on based on the places or their history, like Lucy Foley did in her guest list. She actually went to that island and where the entire murder story happens. So what do you think about the places where Jessie is planning and she's researching and she's going about? Also, second part, if I can just ask the questions and then you can, answer them. Large family units or nuclear family units, because us from the subcontinents, I think from India and Pakistan, we really what you can say resonated with the book because we understand large family units. We all belong to larger families. We have uncles and every character that you just mentioned, that does exist in every family over here as well. So what do you believe in that, larger family units or nuclear family units? And first of all, also about the places that you researched, did you actually do a recce? Did you go and visit? Was there some memories there which you mentioned in related to these places? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Humaira. Some of them are real. Like the first hotel that they go to in the very beginning in Kerry is somewhere that I have been to with my nephews. We go every Easter. So that was inspired by a real place. Then a couple of summers I've been to Tuscany in Italy, and we hired a house. So I was able to write about, about Tuscany that way. But I had to actually go to Florence because I hadn't been to the Uffizi Gallery. I had to go there to research. But others I just made up, like the Harvest Festival. I mean, for me, the idea of a festival just fills me with horror. The thought of like a tent, like, I mean, I need a bathroom, like I can't handle roughing it in any way. So I decided I would create this festival where like everything is beautiful. Then there's another weekend when they go to the Casey's for the 50th wedding anniversary. Yeah, I mean, the Atlantic Ocean and all that, that's real because my mother's from the west of Ireland, but those houses were imaginary. So some I just made up, but some were based on real things. And yeah, I've always believed in research, but I thought there were a couple of, I thought I can wing it with the festival, definitely, and also with the houses in the west of Ireland, because I've been to those beaches many times. Now, nuclear family or large family, I love a large family, love it. And like with my nuclear family, it's just me and my husband, and that just feels shamefully small. Like, I love lots of us. I love the idea of a tribe. I love the idea of like we go everywhere together, 15 of us. You know, I just like that feeling of you're always with one of your people. It just, I would have loved loads of children. You know, I would have loved, in my wildest dreams, 6, you know, but then again, you know, children wouldn't have belonged to me, you know, so it's all wishful thinking anyway. So yeah, I mean, I like lots. I mean, I am so envious of all of you with lots of uncles and aunties. I don't have very many. But yeah, I love how, as you say, there's a specific personality type that kind of shows up in every family. And I love also how those patterns repeat, you know, that the next generation think, oh my God, she is so like auntie so-and-so. You know, I love those links to kind of the people who have gone before. And, you know, you can see it in the new babies. You go, oh my God, she looks like her granny. All of those things make me very, very happy. So thank you. Lovely questions.
Okay, we have Zia who wants to say something. Zia is a very, very regular at my book club, and she's always got fun things to say. So Zia, what do you have to say?
Hi, good morning.
Hi,
Sorry,
Zia.
it's still morning here. And it was great to hear you listen. I just had 2 quick observations. It's not so much a question. One was how towards the end, Johnny realizes that it's okay if he never goes back and has the same relationship that he had with the Kinsellas. I personally went through something similar, and I was glad that not everything was wrapped up in a nice, pretty bow at the end. And it's okay to move away from people even if you love them, even today. The second part is actually part of the acknowledgements that you mentioned. There's something you mentioned about direct provision, and I'll just read this really quickly. It's a terrible way to treat people who are already traumatized, and I suspect that one day Ireland will feel great shame that we let this happen. And I think this is such an important conversation to have. It's not just Ireland that would be held accountable. I live in Canada, so of course I'm a minority here, and I see it in every day, like especially since we started taking a lot of Syrian refugees over the years, since Trudeau came in, and it is so important to have a conversation that these are people. They didn't just move for fun. They were displaced. Their homes and lives were taken away from them, and they had professions. And I just appreciate it coming from somebody who may not have experienced anything similar, or say have had a privileged life in a way. I appreciate, because I hadn't read anything of yours before this, and I actually recently finished Lucy Sullivan Got Married, and I can see a difference between how you mentioned, you made a like off the cuff remark about Philistine, and then Daniel and Lucy are like Filipino and Palestine, versus how you mentioned the refugees in this book. It's a different conversation, and I'm glad that we're having this conversation now. So I just wanted to acknowledge that you had mentioned it, and it was great to read about it, even if it was in a small capacity.
Oh, thank you so much, Sia. I really, really appreciate you picking up on that. Yeah, definitely. As I've got older, I have used my novels of popular fiction to try and sow the seed of social conscience in people, because, as you say, like, nobody arrives as a refugee because because they wanted to come. You know, they had lives at home. They had an identity. They had a family. They had a job. They had security. They had their home. And I just feel it's appalling that there's hostility when they arrive. You know, I feel like that they should be wrapped in cotton wool, and that they should be taken care of, and, you know, and given every lovely thing until they feel capable again. Um, and and thank you for picking up on it. And it is something that, you know, it is very, very important to me to try and represent those who don't have voices, because I have a voice. And 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 as you say, it's a small part of the story, because I need to always serve the story, because if it becomes more about issues, I lose readers, and that works for nobody. But, you know, I've started another book, and writing another book, and there's more coming in that. So thank you. I appreciate it very, very much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I also think that, the portrayal of the refugee in this book, particularly where she's not conforming to their idea of what she would be like or whether she'd have alcohol or not. I thought that was brilliantly done and very well put together too. Sonia also has a question. A regular at my book club, always has great things that she points out in books. Yes, Sonia.
I'm looking to see you.
Sonia, where are you?
Here.
Okay.
Hi, Sonia.
Hi, Marian.
Hi, Sonia.
Okay, Marian, I have a question for you. I mean, has it ever happened that a character developed in such a way that you had to change your original plot? I mean, was there such a character in Grown Ups? One that surprised you in such a way, in a way that you didn't anticipate at the beginning, and then you had to change your plot because of that character?
Well, kind of. I mean, in the beginning of the book, I didn't know which characters were going to have the various issues. Like, I didn't. You know, I thought maybe Cara would have financial. When I start a book, I have I've only got the vaguest idea of who each character is and what their story is. And it comes into focus slowly, as I kind of write more about them. So yeah, I mean, this wasn't the worst, but other books I've written, I've had to delete lots and lots of things when the story kind of took a swerve, some way into it. But once I kind of got a handle on which secret they had, it kind of stayed okay. But I mean, I absolutely understand what you're saying. Just that, I mean, the previous book that I had written, The Break, that had a different plot, and that ended up in quite a different book. But this actually, it cooperated. Like, Grown Ups cooperated in a way that other books haven't. And you're absolutely right. I think an awful lot of writers will say that the character took control of the plot in a way that they hadn't anticipated, and that it involved like having to go where the character took them. So thank you. That was a very astute question.
Thank you, Marian.
Thank you. We also have Fatma Noman, who says, I've become a fan. I totally agree with what Marianne said about reacting to a situation once you're in it. You can't prepare for hypothetical situations. So wise and so apt in everything, Marianne, you're saying. Much love. And I'll put the last question up fourth, and this is the last one because we're already due our time. This is from Zoha. So Zoha, would you like to come on board and ask Marianne what it is that you want to talk about?
Hello, Marianne. I hope you're doing well.
Hi, Zoha.
So actually, I don't have a question, but I have something to say about your book. It's that I don't usually read like very lengthy books and usually get bored of them. But this one, actually, I was really tempted to read it because the way you've actually described all the characters and how it just changes all of a sudden from like how Kara becomes, from how she's chaotic and she actually rude a bit, but then suddenly we actually get to know that she's a bit of like suffering from concussion and everything. It's actually really interesting. So like, thank you for this book. It's honestly really nice and one of my favorites, I think. Because I also want to like write someday, and I think I can't write lengthy, but reading this, it's actually the way you like literally describe the characters, and I'm really inspired. So thank you.
Oh, Zoha, it's my absolute pleasure. I mean, thank you so much. Yes, it is very long. It was never my intention for it to be that long, but as I get older, they seem to be getting longer. But Zoha, if you want to write, don't worry about the length. Just write the story. Just tell the story, and let it be how many words it is. Please don't worry about that. What matters is that you tell the story with your heart and that you create characters that you believe in. And I really wish you well. And thank you so much for your lovely comments.
Thank you. I loved your book, and it's such a pleasure to actually talk to you. It's actually like kind of feel like an honor to talk to you right now, because I've also wanted to be like inspired. I'm always inspired by you, and I've always wanted to inspire people too. So I think it's like really fun right now. And I hope to be as much of an inspiring author like you someday. So hopefully.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. Just do it. Just write.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Soha, and thank you to everybody who joined us today. Thank you, Marian, for taking out the time and interacting with all of us. It really makes such a difference to us when we hear that an author wants to engage with us and wants to know what we have to say about your books. Because honestly, when you write something like this, it brings out so many emotions and so many thoughts in every one of our head. And I also feel that this is why I love community reading. I love reading with a group because it brings to light so many different things and perspectives that I couldn't have thought of on my own. So thank you, Marianne, for writing.
Oh, thank you. I mean, seriously, you have no idea how delighted I am about this. It has been such fun and so exciting. I feel frustrated that it's just a tiny amount of time, and I would love to sit down with every single one of you and just talk and talk and talk and talk. And I really, really would love to come to Lahore. Thank you for your interest. Thank you for reading my book. Thank you for showing up today. Thank you for your time and for your questions. Thank you, Sana, in particular, for running such a beautiful event. I feel so, my heart is so full after this, and seriously, thank you, with all my heart. It has just been a complete joy. So take care, stay safe, and see you on the other side of the pandemic.
Definitely. And with a newer book and another conversation around it, thank you so much. I'd like to end this conversation with something that you wrote in this book at the end, when I was rooting for Nell and Ferdia to take things further. And she says how it's important for him to be a speck in the mosaic of her life. And I really love that thought. And I think we're all specks in the mosaics of each other's lives. And I would like to seal this moment as it is, Thank you so much, all those of you who joined us. Thank you, and more power and more love to you, Marianne, than ever. If you have the book, just hold it up and I'll take a nice photo of all of you who'd like to be in my photograph. And by the way, Marianne, I love the illustration over here. This is like me on most days. So if you
I
have,
think that's most of us.
yeah.
That illustration is my hair every time.
I'm still bummed about the pink one that I have. I wish I had
I
the
think
white
it's
one.
lovely. Oh, I love it.
Thank you so much for sharing the frame with us, Marianne, and blessing us.
A pleasure. A genuine, absolute pleasure. Thank you. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you. Take care,
Thank
Marianne.
you.
And
Thank you. And you're very welcome to India as well. Please do, whenever the pandemic is over, send a visit to India, Pakistan, and meet all of us. It'll be a pleasure. Thank you.
I think
Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Yeah, Jayanti. You take care of the Indian side and I'll take care of the Pakistani side. We've got a plan now.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you, Sana. That was very nice.
Thank you, Jay. I love seeing you in person.
Yes, I'm glad this is at the moment, this is the closest we can come to.
Yeah.
And it's been really great. It's one of those serendipity kind of thing that, on Instagram, I come across your account, what you're reading, and it kind of all falls into place.
Yeah, and believe me, most of these people over here, I've only met on Instagram, and only a few of them I've actually ever really met in my life. And that makes me so, so glad. Like Avkirat here, who's not showing her face, her beautiful face. Yeah. I would have loved to see
because I've been feeding my daughter and we're sitting in a night. I'm still hungover from last night's session that I had. My book club. I'm still hungover from
12 in the night that I'd committed to it. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, so it's been a crazy, weekend. I'm still hungover. I'm sleep deprived, and also I'd not read the book, but I really wanted to be a part of this. And this session was so insightful. The topics that you spoke about, they're so relatable, even across the globe. All of us face similar situations.
You love hearing her talk.
And like like it was one of us said, that we all feel part of a large family because we all come from large families.
Oh, yes, of course.
It's not alien to Zia. You made a beautiful point, and that was very, very. And I did get your name right, Zia?
Yes,
Zoya?
it is Zia. It's just I tend to see that a lot more here in this part of the world. So it was something that stuck with me when I was reading, even if it's a small thing, right? Like I know the book wasn't centered around it, and if it was, I understand that it would have gotten away from the story. But just the fact that people are noticing it and are like talking about it it's good to know.
Down in my notes, and I completely forgot to talk to her about this because I was worried about the time and I wanted everyone to talk. But thank you so much. You're always my savior. And it was Priya actually who put me up to this, because she one fine day said, you know what, Sana, why don't you get Marianne on board? And I was like, really? Can I do that?
It's so amazing that you made this happen, because what are the odds? I mean,
Yeah,
so amazing.
it's once in a lifetime. I hope it happens again, though.
I
And
know.
reading Little Fires everywhere now. And if you guys want to read, just pick up the book and read with us. If you have read the book, then we're meeting up online again on Zoom next month. And after that, we're going to be reading It's Not About the Burqa. So mark these books if you guys want to read with us. I'd be so happy to have all of you on board. I'm actually enjoying this more than my coffee table sessions, that I
Yes, I'm glad to hear that. I'll be there for little fires everywhere because I've read the book, so I'll be there with a lot of questions.
Lovely.
I'll join. I've read the book. I'll kind of browse through it again, and it's just nice to have this community. It's not just about reading the book; it's about reading it and discussing
Absolutely.
it, and just
have real friends. I'm so happy.
Yes, this is really nice.
Also, all of you are welcome to be a part of my book club meets as well.
Yes, Akirat, I'm definitely going to be a part of your book club meets.
I'll send links to everybody.
And do send me
Of course.
I'm a little zoned out right now, but I'll get in touch with everybody.
That's okay.
Sleep deprived.
Good morning to Canada and good night to the rest of us.
Take care.
Bye. Take care. Have a good dinner.
Thank you, Sana. Thank you once again. Bye.
Bye.
And you were fantastic.
Little
You were
fire
fantastic.
everywhere, and then It's Not About the Burqa. I'll send it to you on a WhatsApp. Just send me a message, Farwa. Okay, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care.